I have very capable legal people, John Sauer, as you know, and all top people. And I have to rely on that to interpret whatever's said by the Supreme Court. Now, with that being said, I have tremendous respect for the Supreme Court. Look, 3 of the people are people I appointed.
Right.
And I have great respect for the Supreme Court. And I would expect that the Attorney General will be doing the right thing.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know.
as
It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth, some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Let's talk about that moment when he said, I don't know, when I asked him if he has to uphold the Constitution of as the President of the United States. What was your reaction to hearing that? Do you think he has to uphold every part of the Constitution, including the Fifth Amendment?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. I think what the president was talking about is, yes, he's going to uphold the Constitution. He's taking advice from his legal team, led obviously by the White House counsel, the Attorney General of the United States, everybody working at the Department of Homeland Security, about all of the parameters that they are using to deport illegal aliens out of this country, which is the core of President Trump's victory last November. Let's remember, the American people have been clear that they want criminal illegal aliens, number one, and then illegal aliens overall returned to their home countries. Donald Trump is fulfilling that promise.
Boy, 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 boy. So we got to talk about the liberal media, the Democrats and the leftists, who are hell-bent on trying to allow illegal immigrants to stay in this country, okay? This is what they're trying to do. They don't care about the illegals committing crimes, raping women, human trafficking, being agents of chaos. They don't care about all of that, okay? Eli Mistal admitted that, hey, if I was killed by an illegal, it is what it is, right? It is what it is.
Why do I care what their status was when they committed the crime? If you can prove they committed a crime. I say in the book, if I get shot, if I get murdered by an undocumented immigrant, please tell my children I did not care that they were undocumented.
Wow, incredible stuff. Absolutely incredible stuff. These are the type of people that we're dealing with here, guys, okay? They want the illegals to stay no matter what, okay? And this is why they are using the judicial branch in order to try to overthrow the federal government, the executive branch, when it comes to keeping the illegals in this country, okay? Because you have these woke activist judges that are trying to stop President Trump from carrying out the mass deportation. So with that being said, the latest hoax from the mainstream liberal media is this idea that President Trump claimed that he doesn't know if he is going to uphold the Constitution, right? As you guys saw at the beginning of this video, in response to a question from Kirsten Welker about upholding the Constitution. Clearly, President Trump was saying in context that, hey, when it comes to these mass deportations and due process, yeah, I don't know if these illegal immigrants are entitled to the same type of due process as the American citizens. We're currently working this out in court, and I am going to abide by the Supreme Court. He specifically said that he is going to by the Supreme Court rulings, whatever they say, right? That is what he said in the interview, which clearly means he's going to uphold the Constitution due to the fact that he said he's going to follow what the Supreme Court says. It's their job to interpret the Constitution, right? And the president is not a lawyer, right? Clearly, he's trying to say, this is not my area of expertise. I have my legal team dealing with this stuff. I personally don't know, right? But, you know, again, the mainstream liberal media, they're trying to spin this into something that it is not.
Yeah, I wonder why it's so difficult to understand a pretty simple concept. If Trump wants to deport illegal immigrants, he can do that, but he ought to do it legally. Do you think that that is a fair thing to say at this moment?
I do. I do think the media is pulling another, dictator for a day hoax right now, because it's clear when Trump said, I don't know, what he meant was what he finished his sentence saying, which is, I don't know where the Supreme Court is going to come down on whether deporting these illegal migrants is constitutional or not. It's very obvious, yet every single headline...
You just called it a hoax, so let's just play. Can we play it again in the control room, what Trump said in response to Kristen Walker? We're getting it up right now.
Can I make
Don't
another
you need
clip?
to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said.
What's wrong with that?
So the Supreme Court is going to decide what is constitutional and what is not. And Trump just committed 100% to following what the Supreme Court says. I want to make one more very quick point.
There's another clip. Do we have the other one where he talks about whether citizens deserve due process? If we do, let's play that one.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says...
I don't know. It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials.
So can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So what does it mean for an illegal immigrant to have due process? We would all agree that they do not have the same level of due process that we do. For example, we are entitled to a jury trial, and they are entitled to a hearing before an immigration judge. Do you know who the immigration judges work for? They work for the executive branch. They work for which means that they work for Donald Trump, which means that he is in charge of the due process that they get.
But Donald Trump doesn't even want to give him even that due process. I mean, I think that's part of the problem.
He said he is not sure the level to which they are entitled.
She didn't ask about what level of due process.
That's a very basic statement.
No, I mean, the reason I'm jumping in here is because she did not ask him should they have a jury trial? Should they not have a jury trial? She just said whatever process they are entitled to. If they're immigrants and they're in an immigration proceeding, then yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a different type of proceeding. It's actually more of an administrative proceeding.
It's a much lower standard as well.
But still, even still, they are trying to circumvent that minimal amount of due process.
Then why does
and
it
the
take so
question
long?
is,
let me give
why?
you an example. In the example of Kilmar Obrego Garcia, I believe he already got his due process.
Yes.
He had a deportation order. So for Trump to be asked, does that man deserve more due process? I think the answer is absolutely not. I don't want another dime of my taxpayer dollars to go to. He was not supposed to be sent to El Salvador.
Let's
he had a deportation.
Let's put Kilmar Obrego Garcia to the side for
I'm just using him as an example
I know that you are,
of someone who
but I
Trump
also
could
think
very
that,
legitimately say does not need any more due process.
Well, it's not Trump's decision to decide that. I think that's the end of the story, is that it's not Trump who decides when the due process ends. It's a process for a reason.
Yeah, so if it's not President Trump's job to decide when due process ends, then what's the point of asking him the question? Why are you guys peddling this hoax about whether or not he's going to uphold the Constitution if his opinion doesn't matter, right? I'm trying to figure out exactly why is this such a controversy, right? If you are saying that his opinion doesn't matter, clearly his opinion does matter, right? Because he is the president of the United States. But see, what Abby Phillip and a lot of these mainstream liberal media anchors fail to realize or to acknowledge, to accept, which is that we're not going to play this game where you allow illegals into the country unfettered, right? You didn't care about the rule of law. You didn't care about due process. You didn't care about any of these things when Biden had open borders letting illegals into the country. Now we're in a situation where we have to deport all those illegals, which means we have to deport millions and millions and millions of people. Practically speaking, we cannot give all 11 million illegal immigrants that came into this country under Joe Biden, we cannot give them the same level of due process as an actual citizen. It's not possible.
Second thing, every illegal alien that came here, the first thing they did is they broke the law coming into our country. They broke the law. Let's level set here. That's what they did. So there is an orderly process that the president and his team is going through. They're not just rounding up people and dropping them out of the country. That is not true. Everybody that's been deported to this point has had a legal deportation order executed by the president's administration.
But in this case, in the case of Kilmer Abrego Garcia, the administration said it was an administrative error. And in 2019, an immigration judge issued an order that's still in effect that he should not be deported back to El Salvador. And I guess this goes back to the question that I was asking to President Trump. Do you think that everyone, citizens and non-citizens, are entitled to due process?
Well, first and foremost, let me be clear with you. When it comes to due process, that is a privilege reserved for American citizens. When people are in our country illegally, there is a semblance of due process, but not nearly at the level of a United States citizen, of an American. There are two different standards. You come to America, you are a guest in the United States. That privilege can be revoked. And a lot of these illegal aliens were not guests. They showed up at the southern border. Joe Biden abused our laws, ignored our laws, and let them in. And yet, so what are the American people supposed to say about that?
Well, the Constitution, I mean, let me just read you. This is the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces. And then it goes on to say, nor shall any person be subjected for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life, limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So the Constitution says any person, not citizen. And therein lies the debate and the root of my question. I mean, does any person just apply to citizens in your mind, or does it apply to citizens and non-citizens? The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says it applies to citizens and non-citizens.
Well, let's be very clear. First and foremost, when the framers wrote our Constitution, they never envisioned that there would be an executive that would allow millions of people to come into the country illegally. They never fathomed that. Number two, more importantly, you have a situation right now. Is it okay for any administration to not follow the law, abuse border security laws, let millions of people in, and then hide behind the court system to say, well, now they're here, so now we have to go through a lengthy process? Let's examine this right now. Right now, what we know is that when people came into the country illegally, almost 90% of them would not even go to the hearings. So if you're supposed to show up for a hearing and you do not go, what are we supposed to do as a country?
Very quickly, let me just interject, and we're running out of time, and I still have to get to the economy.
Sure.
To your point about the hearings, does Congress need to work harder to get more funding, to get more resources to the courts so that you can better process people who are here, who are undocumented?
In the one big beautiful bill, there will be dollars provided to the administration to speed up the deportation efforts. I will add that one of the things we have to be very sober about is that the gravity upon which all these people have been brought to our country, it is not physically possible to hire that many judges and process them out of the country. This is why you cannot have open borders to begin with.
Facts. That's the reality. And these leftists, they know this, right? Again, this is why they're hiding behind the court system. Well, the illegals need due process. Right? And even for the illegals who've already had due process, they'll still turn around and say, well, he needs more due process. And it's like, what do you mean he needs more due process? He had a valid deportation order and he was deported. Abrego Garcia was deported to his home country. Well, he needs to come back and go through due process again. Why? We deported him back to his home country. But again, this is the game that these people are playing. They know that if the courts can muddy up and slow down the administration's deportation efforts, that in theory, they just have to wait it out 4 years and a Democrat gets back in office and they go back to business as usual. That's what this whole thing is about. This is not about upholding the Constitution. It's not about a lot of that stuff for these leftists. It's not about that. Because if that's what it was about, then these same people would have been just as upset when Biden let all these illegals into the country in the first place. No, they weren't upset. The media was telling us, oh, this is not a problem. The border's closed, right? They're not just letting millions of illegals into the country. But that's exactly what they were doing. They were just letting them in. No due process. No rule of law whatsoever at the border for 4 years straight. And now all of a sudden these people, oh, well, we're concerned about the rule of law. Again, all this is an attempt to slow it down. They're trying to run out the clock on Trump's presidency so that they can get a Democrat back in office and then go back to business as usual. That's what this is about, okay? It is up to the courts to determine what that means in regards to what sort of due process are illegal immigrants entitled to. And I'm glad that President Trump is challenging this stuff, because I think that a lot of this stuff, right, like, for example, birthright citizenship needs to be reevaluated. It needs to be looked at, right? Illegals should not have the same rights as American citizens. At some point, being an American citizen has to mean something, okay? Has to mean something. In the ideal world for Democrats, being an American citizen doesn't mean a damn thing. Doesn't mean a damn thing, because effectively anybody can come over to this country and get the same rights and privileges as American citizens. According to what the Democrats want, they want the illegals to be able to live here, to work, to vote. They can get driver's licenses. Like, at what point is there any difference between an illegal and an American citizen in the eyes of the Democrats and the mainstream liberal media? What special rights and privileges should citizens be able to have that illegals can't, right? That's a great question to ask these people. That's a great question. So, again, don't fall for the nonsense. This is just another hoax from the mainstream liberal media. In context, President Trump was clearly saying, well, listen, I don't know how this is going to work out in court. I have my legal team on it. I'm not a lawyer. And that's where I'm at this point, right? And whatever the court say, I'm going to go with, right? Whatever the Supreme Court decides, we're going to follow it. But at this point, I really don't know in regards to what you mean by upholding the Constitution. Because according to Kirsten Welker and liberal media, the illegals have all the same rights as the American people, right? And that the illegals are entitled to all of these things that the American people are entitled to. And I just think that's something where it's like, okay, well, we need to work that out in court, right? I don't know about that. We should work that out in court. We will see what the Supreme Court decides on this issue. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.